Well, for more on this, we're joined by James Jackson, a journalist and political analyst, joining us live from Berlin. James, many thanks for your time this morning. We're now seeing the global alliances forming and lots of words at the UN. But what's your reading on the situation? Is there a danger that it could now widen and become a more broad conflict between other nations?
There is absolutely a risk that this conflict will spread to other countries. It's not just Israel against Hamas, Israel attacking Gaza. We're also seeing, of course, sporadic fighting between Israel and Lebanon. In fact, this morning, the US also struck Syria in areas that are suspected to be linked to Iran. So there's absolutely a risk of a wider conflagration. I don't think this is a risk of a world war or anything like that. There isn't. I do also believe that the accusations that Russia is playing a significant role here are exaggerated. So there is a chance of a regional crisis. We're already in a regional crisis. There's a chance that this could be a regional war with Israel having to fight on two fronts. But I don't think this is going to be a world war. And of course, there's no risk for security risk to the US. But the US does have massive security interests in the region, including in Israelis in Israel, which is its closest ally in the Middle East. And I think the biggest danger we've seen diplomatically is that the process of normalization, which Israel was undergoing, we were actually looking at a possibility of an Israeli embassy in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. So there had been, since Trump's Abraham Accords, a huge normalization, which is a surprisingly successful diplomatic initiative from Donald Trump. And that seems to have gone out of the window at the moment. Israel is back to being the kind of enemy in the region, surrounded by a lot of hostile states. Now, that hostility in recent years had actually dipped away, and people had, in a sense, many Palestinians felt that they had been abandoned by other Arab states. And in a sense, they were correct. But this war has done exactly what what many observers say was Hamas's main goal with this attack, with their terrorist attack, which is to put that normalization on ice for a while and to gain them support in the West Bank, which is controlled by their more secular rival Fatah. So in terms of civilian damages, it's been horrific. There are thousands dead on both sides, and much of Gaza destroyed, Israel further traumatized, and risk of the conflagration spreading to other nations in the region. So I would say it's quite a dangerous moment for world politics, and especially Middle Eastern politics.
Absolutely, and we're seeing the effect that the US is having on trying to halt a potential ground invasion by Israel. What do you think the latest is on this ground invasion, and of course the hostages that Israel's so desperate to get back?
Yeah, I think this is the question, actually, about the hostages. How desperate is Israel? Because Israeli society really wants their hostages back. The precursor for this is, of course, Gilad Shalit, about 10 years ago, who was taken hostage, and the Palestinians managed to get 1,000 what they claim to be political prisoners released in exchange. Now, Hamas have been a victim of their own success here, if I can use that phrasing, because they have hundreds of hostages. And at this point, Israel doesn't actually have a strategy for getting them back. I think Israel knows, and Hamas are starting to realize, that there's no price that Israel can pay for those, because any price would be too high, because that would sort of justify and give Hamas a win. I think there's an unspoken divide within Israel, or at least it's spoken about in Israel, but the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, doesn't seem very interested in actually getting the hostages back. The hostages, of course, are kept in Gaza, which he's bombing massively. There's been reports that some hostages have been killed by Israeli missiles already. So I don't think we're actually seeing much strategy to get hostages free. That doesn't seem to be Israel's war goals, despite the fact that that's what many in Israeli society and, of course, around the world want, these hostages to be released and to go free. There's been reports of Hamas trying to release them and Israel saying no based on the conditions. So I think actually this is hugely damaging for Benjamin Netanyahu and damaging for his reputation domestically. I would be surprised if this stalwart of Israeli politics actually survives until the end of the year. We've, of course, seen attempts to kick him out of power through democratic means in the last few elections. There was a brief coalition between the sort of centre liberals and those further on the right who opposed Netanyahu due to corruption allegations and his rule of law reforms. But in the last election, he managed to rally his bloc, point out the coalition of chaos and survive, hold on. And unfortunately, this this prime minister who's always claimed to prioritize security seems to have prioritized his own career ahead of Israel's security, which is what led to the massive intelligence failing by the Israeli military that was the October 7 attack.
Okay. James Jackson, many thanks there for that really detailed insight. Political analyst joining us live from Berlin. James Jackson there. Thank you very much.